All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited to get started this afternoon. My name is Yanely Espinal, and I am the Director of Educational Outreach at an organization called Next Gen Personal Finance. So, what we do is we focus on promoting personal finance and financial literacy education all across the country, specifically with high schools. So, we train teachers so that they have the resources and the lessons and the materials that they need to teach high school students, but we also provide resources for middle school students as well. So today in the session, I actually created a Nearpod presentation, which allows you to participate by looking at the slides on your own device, whether that's on an iPad, a laptop, a phone. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat box, and I definitely recommend that you click on that link so you can follow along. But just in case, if there's anybody that is not able to follow along, I will also share my screen so you can see the slides as well in Zoom. So either way, whether you can see it in Zoom or in the Nearpod, you'll still be able to follow along. So I'll just give it like a minute here for everybody to click on the Nearpod link in the chat box and get inside the Nearpod. You just enter your name and press join session. And that way, if there's any live links, if there's going to be a game coming up and all that kind of stuff, you can actually participate right inside of the Nearpod platform. And it's a lot more fun that way. So I'll just give another few seconds here. I see already 10 people are inside of the Nearpod deck. It looks like there's about 40 plus people. So I'll just give another minute or so here for everybody to click the link and then we'll get started. Okay, so it looks like we have about 30 people in the Nearpod presentation deck. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If there's anybody else that joins a little bit later, I'll just keep dropping the link in the chat box so that people can join. But you should still be able to follow along on the screen as well, even if you didn't get a chance to click the link yet. So there's the link to join. And again, so my name is Yanely Espinal. I work at an organization called Next Gen Personal Finance, and my role is Director of Educational Outreach. So what I do in that role is really promote financial literacy and education in personal finance all across the country. And I'm from New York City originally, so being able to speak to students that are in the College Now program is awesome because, being from New York City, I know how tough it is to find mentorship and to find people that can really support you in the college application process. And there's so many components to understand. So I'm just happy to be able to support and answer any questions that you all might have today. So we're going to go ahead and jump into a little bit of my story just so that I'm not a total stranger. And then we'll get started with the presentation. So I went to LaGuardia High School in Manhattan. I was an art major there, and I graduated with a very little understanding of what college was actually going to be like when I got there. And my family, they're from Dominican Republic. So both of my parents immigrated to New York City and they didn't speak any English. So they themselves never went through the college application process. So they didn't really know how to help me with the college application process because they never did it themselves. And also with the language barrier, it was kind of hard for them to kind of figure it out. So I was really doing this like a lot on my own with like my friends helping me, my sisters and brothers helping me, and my college advisor at the high school at LaGuardia was very helpful as well. But it was really me figuring things out and putting all the pieces together. I was one of those kids that always was on top of my schoolwork. Like I would cry if I didn't get a 90 on my test. I'd be like, I can't believe I didn't get a 90. I was just very like I wanted to do well all the time, and I was tough on myself academically. So I had a really good GPA. I was always doing well in my classes, and because of that, I was able to get a full scholarship to college. So I was one of those kids that just lucked out. Like I really did not have to worry about taking out student loan debt. I didn't have to worry about understanding all the differences that we're going to be talking about today. And the tricky thing was that when I got to college, I didn't realize that the scholarship that was awarded to me did not cover certain things. It didn't cover textbooks. It didn't cover, things for my dorm room. It didn't cover supplies for like my science lab classes. There were certain things that were not covered. So I didn't come prepared with money. And so what I did was I ended up using credit cards to buy the things that I needed for school. And then when I realized how easy it was to use credit cards, I started buying things that I didn't need, things that I just wanted: coffee, pizza, hanging out with my friends, going out. And I graduated with $20,000 of credit card debt. And a lot of people don't realize that credit card debt is so much higher in the interest rate that you're being charged compared to student loans. So a lot of times I go back and I think, I'm like, I wish I would have understood the difference between how much you're paying to borrow money, because it's really different when you borrow from credit cards versus when you borrow from student loans. And so I ended up really having to teach myself, how do I get out of this debt? How do I fix my credit score? Because I really messed it up using those credit cards the wrong way. And really, understanding how to fix my situation financially after I graduated college. So once I did that, I started posting videos about everything that I learned on YouTube. And this organization, Next Gen Personal Finance, they found my videos online and they reached out to me and said, wow, you know a lot about money and personal finance and everything. Like, we would like to work with you. And so that's actually how I ended up landing a full-time career and a position in financial education, was just because I started posting videos on YouTube about what I learned through reading books, watching videos, listening to podcasts, and all that kind of stuff. So my story is really one of, like, I learned the hard way, but now I really want young people to have the information they need so they don't have to learn the hard way like I did. So in the work that I do, one of the exciting parts of my job is that we actually create games to help young people understand what are all the different components of financial education that you need to have. And one of those components is paying for college. So just helping students to be able to understand what is the cost of college, what are the different things that you have to do when you get there that are related to money that you might not know that you have to do when you get there. Until you actually experience college, you don't really know what it's like. So we created this game. It's called Payback, and it's all about trying to make it through 4 years of college and all the different decisions that you have to make. So I wanted to quickly, I'm just going to show you first like what it looks like, and then I want to give you a few minutes to play yourselves on in your pod to check out the game. So this is what the game screen looks like when you get there. It's like, college is great. It can lead to opportunities unless it leaves you with a student loan nightmare. So you're going to click get your payback to get started. And the first thing it's going to say is that it's time to apply for college. So you need to enter your GPA. And obviously, the higher the GPA you have, the more eligibility you will have to get things like scholarships, academic grants, academic scholarships, merit-based things. So, the more you devote your time to studying and doing well in school, the better you will have, the opportunity to get more funding for college. So definitely, if you are still a junior, even if you're still senior year, like, you're really working hard to do what you can to get the highest grades possible is so, so important. So, I'm going to go ahead and just model it for average extracurricular activities. If you're not really that involved, like maybe you don't do yearbook committee or the math team, or maybe you're not an athlete, but you might have a job after school or something like that. Like, having some type of extracurricular involvement can really help your college application as well. And then of course you'll go down here and choose the state that you live in. For everybody here, it should be New York, and then you can hit apply. Once you do that in the game, you're going to be given 4 different decisions to college that you were accepted to. So the first one is in-state public school, out-of-state public school, private school, and community college. So you will be able to go through and decide which one you want to play, experiencing that college experience. But you have to pay attention to the differences, right? Of course, there are certain public schools and private schools that are very prestigious, and that, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I've always wanted to go there. That was my dream school. And it might have a lot of stars in terms of the prestige rating. But you also have to pay attention to the cost of attendance and how much financial aid that college package awarded you. Because a lot of times, if you don't pay attention to those numbers, you might actually choose a college that was more expensive when you actually do the math and say, well, this school gave me more financial aid, but their cost of attendance is really high. So even though the financial aid number seems higher, when you subtract it from the cost of attendance, that's going to actually leave you with the amount that you are responsible for paying. So you can't just look at your financial aid package. You can't just look at the college attendance costs. You have to actually look at all of it holistically, like as a whole math problem. You have to say, okay, how much is it going to cost to go to this college? And what does my financial aid award package look like? And then subtract that to see what you are going to be responsible for paying. So it's really important to do all of that math. I'm going to go ahead and just choose out-of-state public school for just here to model. But once you choose your choice, whether it's to stay in New York and go to in-state school, whether it's to do private school, whatever choice you make, you'll start the game. And you have four categories along the bottom that you have to balance at any given time throughout the game. You got to focus and stay focused on your classes, keep up with your GPA so that you don't lose any scholarships or grants that you got. Connections, making connections with friends, meeting people on campus, talking to professors, like really trying to take advantage of the social experience. Happiness, not making sure that you make time to do things that you want to do, that you actually enjoy sometimes as well, because if all you do is just network and study and work, you're not going to be happy. You're going to see your mental health is going to suffer. So you got to make sure you're doing things that make you happy too. And then finally, the last one is debt, which is really focusing on how much are you actually owing after you graduate college. So in this case, there's already, like, freshman year started and I already owe $22,591 because that's how much it costs for me to go to this out of state college that's not in New York based on my choice in the game. So if you want college to be cheaper, going to college in your own state, staying in New York is going to be much cheaper than going out of state. Except for a situation where going out of state to a university that gave you 100% scholarship. That was actually my situation. Like I mentioned earlier, I went to school in Rhode Island, but I had 100% scholarship. So the only thing I really had to pay for was my books, anything that I needed for school that was not covered in tuition. And then going back and forth for like Thanksgiving and Christmas break, like I would take the bus on Port Authority to go to Providence Station, the bus station. And so that those costs, like I had to incorporate that. But in terms of my tuition, my dorm room, and my meals, all of that was paid for. So it ended up being cheaper for me to go out of state. That's not always going to be the case. Majority of the time, staying in your state is going to be cheaper. So once you press continue, you're going to see the game is going to give you a lot of different questions. You have to choose what you're going to do throughout the game and see if you can end up graduating in 4 years, because a lot of people don't, and also keeping your debt as low as possible. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually open up the game inside of the Nearpod platform. So if you are already in Nearpod, you should be able to click on it to start. And if you're not in Nearpod at all, click the link that I'm going to drop in the chat box now to join Nearpod. Or if you don't want to join Nearpod, but you still want to play, you can just go to the website and I'll put that website link in the chat box too. So either way, you have plenty of choices for how to start playing. And we're going to play for a few minutes. I'm not going to, we're not going to spend too much time here, but I do want to give you a chance to at least try to see what are some of the choices that you need to make in to be able to get to college and to be able to get through college. So go ahead and play. I'll give you like maybe a 2-minute warning and a 1-minute warning so that you know when we're going to wrap up and move forward. All right, everybody. We're gonna play for about 2 more minutes. I'll give you a 1 minute warning after this. You can't hear me because we are actually silently completing as much of this game as you can. So if you click on the link to play the game, or you can join inside the Nearpod platform, either one works, and you should be able to try at least to play a little bit of the game for the next few minutes to get a sense for it. It's all about the decisions that you have to make to pay for college. So go ahead and click on either one of those links and you should be able to join the game. I'm going to give you a 1 minute warning in about another minute. All right, everybody, you have about 1 more minute to keep on playing. I made it to year two, the game that I played, but see if you can get as far as you can. And then in about 1 more minute, I will have us to stop playing and move ahead to the next part of the presentation. All right, everybody. So time is up. Let's go ahead and share in the chat box. Put one thing or two things that maybe you were surprised by that you had to pay for in college that you didn't really think about until you played this game. If it was something that you had to pay for, or maybe it was just one part of the game that was surprising to you, or a new piece of information that you learned from playing the game. Go ahead and put it in the chat box. And if you want, you could also unmute yourself and share as well if anybody wants to share verbally. All right. I got a couple answers already in the chat box. Let's see. So the textbooks, yes. So you have to decide how you want to pay for the textbooks. You can buy them brand new, or you can buy them used for a little bit cheaper. And now there's even more companies that are starting to rent textbooks to you. So you rent it, use it, and then return it. So you just pay a rental fee. But if you lose a textbook or you mark it up, then you end up having to pay more. So you have to be careful with renting books and make sure you're going to take really good care of it and not lose it. And then, of course, buying it used means that it's not going to be in brand new condition. And when you try to sell it back, a lot of people try to sell back textbooks after they finish using them. They're never worth the same amount of money that you paid for the textbooks. So that's really annoying. It's frustrating thing, but you just have, that's just the nature of how textbooks works in college. So just getting to know that as early as possible, having a plan for how you're going to pay for textbooks is important. And I mean, when I was on campus, I remember going to the library and trying to see if there were certain textbooks that I needed for class that were available to rent. And I would just photocopy like the pages from the chapters that I needed each week. But that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and it wastes like copying. Like if you only have a certain number of copies at the library that you can print and copy. So you always have to kind of plan ahead. And it's easier if you have your own textbook that you don't have to go worrying about that. I didn't think about selling books at the end of the year. Absolutely. That's an easy way to make some money back, Sophia. The only thing is just know that if you paid, let's say you pay $130 for the textbook, when you sell it back, you might only get like $25. And that's really frustrating because you paid so much for it and you only get back a little bit and then they resell it at a profit. So the bookstore always wins, not you, but at least getting some money back for it is helpful, especially if you're not going to use that book again. So, if you're going to take different classes and you don't need that specific book for your coursework, then it's always a good idea to try to get some cash for the books. Lena said there's a bunch of stuff for the dorm room that is more expensive than I thought. Definitely keeping your dorm room to a minimum. Like, I remember I thought for some reason I thought I was so fancy. I remember I bought like a lamp, I bought a rug for my room, I bought posters for the wall. I decorated my room like if it was a real apartment. And in my mind, like now I go back, I'm like, I wish I could just kept it simple, just get the basics. You don't need to have a fancy, super fancy dorm room. Save that for when you are, older and you actually have a real apartment. Like, there's no need to go all out because you're just wasting a lot of money that you can use for other things. Transportation to and from campus, meals, they definitely add up. Paying for items inside your dorm came up again. Some grants are only applicable to 1 year, like maybe freshman year, but then it doesn't renew again. Definitely. These are great answers. There's so many things. Time management, trying to make time for your family and friends while you also have to study for class. So a lot of this is maybe not financial, but still, some tough decisions that you have to make. All right, so these are great. And I think again, every decision is different. It's case by case, right? And you have to think about your situation. Like, does your professor expect you to use that class next semester again? If so, find out, because if you sell it and then you need to buy it back again later for a higher price, you're going to be so upset. So it's important to do the research, ask questions, talk to your professors, and talk to some of the students that you know that are older than you that already took that class last year, and try to find out as much as you can to make all of the decisions that make the most sense for you. And Nasia says, I didn't know how to pay, that you had to pay to join a sorority. Yes, a lot of people don't realize that, especially in high school. You might, in your mind, you might see yourself like joining a fraternity or sorority and, taking part in all of these social events on campus. And then when you get there and you apply, you realize you have to pay semester dues. You might think twice, like, oh, is it really worth it? For some people, they say absolutely it's worth it. You get a network, you get to take leadership skills, take advantage of leading events and hosting things and doing a lot of philanthropy and charity organizational work. Like, it could be great, but at the same time, other people say, you know what, if I would go back and I would do it differently. So it really just depends on you, what you're looking to get out of college and the social experience, and how much you think the network in that organization can give you access to people, connections, potential jobs in the future, and opportunities like that. So I think it's a very personal decision, but yes, at the end of the day, it does involve money. And a lot of people don't realize that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward to talking about the difference between the sticker price and the net price of college. One of the reasons why so many people end up not having a clear picture of how much they're going to pay for college is because they don't compare the sticker price to the net price. So what's the difference? The sticker price is just like when you go to the store and you see the price tag, the sticker on the item says this is how much it costs. But then maybe when you go to the register to pay for it, the merchant tells you, oh, this is actually on sale. Did you know it's 10% off? If you didn't know, you're like, oh, nice, surprise, I just got a discount. I didn't know. It's the same thing with grants and scholarships. If you are not aware that there's grants and scholarships and opportunities like that for you out there, you can miss out on getting those discounts applied to your college education costs. So it is really important while you're in high school right now that you start spending at least 20 minutes every single week just devoting that time to look for scholarship opportunities and put all of the links to the application, look and see if you qualify, if this feels like the right fit for you, and create a spreadsheet. Maybe it's a Google spreadsheet or a Google Doc that you just add all the links, and then take some time out of your week to apply to as many scholarship programs as you can, as many grant programs as you can. I actually have a friend who applied to like 200 different scholarships and grant programs, and she was only accepted to about 21. So that means that 180 programs did not accept her. So that's a lot of time that she spent hours and hours writing essays, submitting applications. But you know what? When you add up the amount of money that she got from the 21 applications that did accept her, it pretty much paid for 90% of her tuition. So it's a lot of time, right, that you put in up front, but it can be a really great payoff later on. And also, you have comments in the chat, which is really great. Thank you, Clemente, for sharing that. because you're part of college now, you have a great opportunity right here to earn free transferable college credits while you're in high school, which means that if you go to college and they accept those transferred credits, now you have less courses to take in college, which means less money that you have to pay to graduate on time. So that's a really great opportunity. And if you guys didn't already know about that, make sure you click on that link in the chat box, because that's an amazing opportunity. So after you add up all of the grants and scholarships that you have been awarded and you subtract that amount from the sticker price, you'll find out what the net price. That's actually how much you will need to pay for college. But the reason why so many people get confused and end up really frustrated with the whole college process, they end up with a lot of debt, and it's because there's confusion around what are the opportunities to finance college. How do you pay for it? So much debt. It's just been increasing the average amount of student loan debt. And what I find when I talk to people, especially people that are just graduating college, like seniors and juniors in college, what they say is that they didn't really know how to pay for college and what the correct order of the types of debt that they should take for college if they needed to borrow. They didn't know the order to prioritize, and that can be really huge. So I wanted to spend time just talking about what is that order and how do you prioritize which ones to focus on first. So the first things first, we already talked about, which is scholarships and grants. Put as much of your energy right now towards getting scholarships and grants as much as you can. There's so many scholarship programs, like everywhere that you go shopping or that you eat food. Like if you think about like McDonald's, Burger King, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, they all have college scholarship programs. If you think about like music that you like to listen to, a lot of musical artists, like they have grant programs and they have scholarships available for college students. So everything that you like, where you're already paying attention to, what's going on in social media or on the news, like where you shop and spend your money, like pay attention to those companies and look on their, like Google the company names and if they have scholarships. Nike has scholarships, Adidas has scholarships, Jordan has scholarships. Like there's so many available, but the sad thing is that a lot of students don't look for them and they don't apply. So you really have to pay attention to going out of your way to do the research. The important thing too about scholarships and grants is that when you get a scholarship or grant, it's important to look specifically in your state as well, not just national too. National ones are great, but they're a little bit harder, obviously, to qualify for because you're competing against people that are in every state in the US. National means all the states in our nation. Versus if you look and you're strategic about New York specific grants and scholarships, you have a much smaller pot versus everybody applying from across the country. So I would definitely recommend looking at resources online and looking for New York specific scholarships and grants. This is just one article that I found that talks about the different grants and scholarships available in New York specifically. So I'll drop the link to this one in the chat box. It's one example. This is not like the most comprehensive list. This is not all of them, but this is just a type of example of something that you might find if you go doing research. And of course, through CUNY, there are so many more resources. There's a link right now in the chat box with some info on the CUNY website that gives you even more information about before you even get to college, paying for college and preparing to apply. I know that there's some resources here through, for just so many different organizations, so many different scholarship funds. So just, being aware is really important. That's the first step, because when I was in high school, I did not take enough advantage. I wasn't really aware, and I just got really lucky to be awarded one scholarship that was based on my family's demonstrated financial need and also my academic record. But I didn't really do a lot of work, and I could have done so much more work and left for college with way more money in scholarships and grant funding. So this is a really important step, and this is something that you should already be doing. If you're not doing it right now, just like you wake up, you brush your teeth, you plan your lunch, you do your homework, you try to make some time to exercise if you can. Add scholarships and grants, researching for scholarships and grants, add that as something that you need to prioritize with your schedule every single week. And I guarantee you will not regret it, because finding even just one or two scholarship opportunities can really make a big difference to how much you end up paying. All right, so the next thing here is looking at, oh, there's a question in the chat from Felicia. Are there any scholarships for students that may not qualify for full ride grants? Oh, absolutely. There definitely are so many. FastWeb has a lot of resource opportunities. There's an app called Scholly. The Scholly app is a good one for you to look at. And honestly, when you're looking through them, look to see what are the qualifications. Like for me, I'm Latina. My parents are immigrants. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I went to high school in Manhattan and I studied art. So if I'm looking and I see some scholarships that say you have to be Latina, you have to be a first generation American, you have to have studied art, and you have to be from New York City, I'll be like, oh, that's perfect for me. I check off every single one of those qualifications, right? So you want to look for things that the more specific it is that describes you and what you're looking to pursue, the better you qualified you're probably going to be to match up with that scholarship. So just look for the more specific ones that you can get, the better. I will definitely be sharing some resources at the end to activities that you can do to help you find scholarships and resources, websites, all of that good stuff. I promise I'll be sharing links. Okay, so then the next step is after you have done everything you can to get as many scholarships and grants as possible, work study is the next best opportunity because your school, wherever you do choose to go to college, they may or may not offer you work study. But if they do, this means that you'll be able to work on campus or near campus, and the money that you earn will be going towards tuition, so you don't have to worry about racking up more student loan debt. Instead, your wages that you work will offset the cost of what you have to pay to attend college. So that's a really helpful way. I did work study 3 years that I was in college, and it was definitely worth it for me. And it also helps you to, pay for your textbooks or anything else that you might need to pay. So it's a really good opportunity, and you don't have to take on any debt when you sign up for a work study program. So that's a really good opportunity to do before considering borrowing money. Now, the next one, numbers 3 and 4, is actually borrowing money. So these are loans. Anytime you see the word loan, you know that means that you have to pay it back because it's money that's being lent to you. You can hold it temporarily and use it, but you need to pay it back. And the difference between number 3 and number 4 is the word subsidized or unsubsidized. So we're going to talk about that because there's a big difference between that. When you have subsidized federal student loans, you're borrowing money from the federal government, but you're getting a subsidy with that loan. And the word subsidy basically means you get a bag of money that is free money. That amount of money is going to be equal to the interest that is going to be charged on the loan amount that you borrowed. So let's say, for example, I take on $10,000 in a subsidized federal student loan, and I'm borrowing 10,000. In my mind, I go, okay, so I need to pay back $10,000. And if I look at the interest rate, let's say the interest rate is 5%, then I know I have to calculate 5% every single year on top of the 10,000 that I borrowed. But if I have a subsidized federal student loan, then that means when I graduate, even though there was interest that was being charged on top of the loan, the 5% every year, I will only have to pay back $10,000 that I borrowed because the subsidy is going to be equal to the amount of interest that accrued, that was piled on to my loan, and it's going to pay that off for me. So now I only owe the $10,000 that I borrowed. So if you qualify for subsidized student loans, you always want to take the subsidy. Think of a subsidy as free money. Why in the world would you say no to the free money if there's no strings attached, right? So you have to prioritize subsidized student loans, get as much of that as you can first if you need it. And then after subsidized student loans, you can look at unsubsidized student loans, which basically means no subsidy. So when you graduate, you not only will you owe back the $10,000 that you borrowed, but you also have to pay back the interest that they're going to charge you, which is the fees that you have to pay in order to even be able to borrow that $10,000. So 5% every year, is actually pretty low right now because of the COVID Relief Act and everything that was implemented in response to COVID-19. All federal student loans are actually at the lowest interest rate that they have ever been in history, which is 2.75%. So that is super, super, super low interest rate. My credit cards, when I was using credit cards on campus to buy textbooks and buy everything, was 22% interest. So being able to pay 2% versus 22, that I was paying 10 times more in fees compared to what you would pay if you were to borrow money for student loans today. So just really understanding the difference between subsidized federal student loans and unsubsidized can help you to make the best decision for you, especially in the order that you accept money when it's awarded to you. Can you start applying for scholarships now? Yes, Clemente got that question for me. Absolutely, you can start applying today, right now. If you go on apps or you go on websites, social media, look for hashtag scholarships, hashtag high school students applying for college, hashtag college scholarships, hashtag, look for all of that. If you find stuff that applies to you and you reach out and you apply, you can start right now. You don't have to wait. Do scholarships affect your parents' tax return or you later in life? So if you see the word scholarship or grant, those two words let you know that there's no impact on anything in the future. It's free money that you're being awarded and given for free, like a gift. So grant money that you don't have to pay back is being granted to you, given to you. Scholarship, same thing. You're being awarded the money, and usually it's attached to something that has to do with your scholarly work, which is why it's called a scholarship. So maybe it's an application that you submitted, maybe it's a portfolio that you did and submitted, maybe it's your grades that qualified you, maybe it's an athletic scholarship and it has to do with your ability and your skills in sports. Whatever the reason is that you were awarded that scholarship, the word scholarship tells you that you don't have to pay it back. So scholarships and grants, that's why they're number one, because you don't have to worry about taking on debt. It's free money that you get to use for college and you don't have to pay it back. And the sad thing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Since like there's scholarship and grants, why do people go for loan when loan is worse?
Yes, you are absolutely making the right question. If you apply to as many scholarships and grants as you can, and the total that you get is $20,000 in grants and scholarships, and then you apply to a college and the tuition is $45,000 a year, you look at your savings account and you have $200 saved plus the $20,000 in grants and scholarships. That's $20,200, but you still have to get to $45,000 if that's the tuition. So there's a gap in how much you're able to get and how much you need to pay. So whatever the difference is, you would have to come up with that money. And so because a lot of people don't often reach that number, they have to then go, and the last resort is to say, I guess I'm going to have to borrow some money because I don't have it. My parents don't have it. The scholarships and grants that I already got don't add up, it's not enough money for me to be able to afford to pay this tuition. So a couple of things that you can do. You can choose a cheaper school, which has a lower tuition, which is a great option, especially in New York. We have so many amazing CUNY schools, SUNY schools. You have so many options in New York. Being a New Yorker, that like it's almost like it's true. If you are a low income student and you qualify for all of the grants and scholarships, and you also get college aid from the university, like a lot of times you don't have to actually end up borrowing any money. And sometimes you might even get a refund check, a student loan refund check, where the scholarships and financial aid was awarded, gets applied to the school for the money you owe, and there's actually money left over. Then they will give it to you, and they'll write you a check and send it to you. And that's actually very common, especially for lower income students. But the trick there is, when you get a student loan refund check, that's for that semester or that year. The following semester or the following year, you still have to pay tuition again. Remember, you have to pay tuition every single semester while you're in college. It's not like you pay tuition your first semester and then that's it. It's paid for all 4 years. So some students, they get their refund check and they're like, oh, lit, I got $1,000, and they spend it all. They buy whatever they want. They go shopping. They buy whatever. And then the next semester comes, tuition is due, and they don't have the money because their refund check that came, they didn't have the discipline the self-control to not spend that money, to hold on to it, put it in a savings account and wait until the next semester to be able to pay all the tuition. So it's very important either way. If you don't feel like you need to borrow and you end up being the type of student that gets a refund check, to still be as responsible as you can with these financial decisions, because I know so many friends that they made that mistake. They used their student loan refund check to go to Miami for spring break. They use their student loan refund check to buy new clothes, new shoes. Some people use it to buy a MacBook, to buy a new Apple Watch, a new iPhone. And it's tempting. It's tempting to do that. But you got to remember that that money is for college. And so later on, when they bill you for tuition, if you don't have the money, you're going to really regret that you wasted it before, when you had the opportunity to put it aside so you don't have to worry about paying tuition later. All right, a couple questions. Let's see if I can go through. Wait, I have a question. Are scholarships that are offered by schools only specific to those who attend that school? So there are school-specific, college-specific college scholarships that you might get once after you get accepted to that college. So, everybody can check to see if their college has specific scholarships from that college, but that's not the only way to get scholarships and to get grant funding, right? You can apply to scholarships anywhere and get accepted to them. And some might say, like, you have to go to this school if you take this scholarship. So you really have to read the details attached to any, grant funding or scholarship funding that you get. Yes, certain scholarships that are like just a general scholarship, you can apply to any college that you go to. So that's why it's important in your sophomore year, junior year, senior year to apply to as many scholarships as you can, because once you get accepted to college, they will send that money either to you and your parents or directly to the college that you get accepted to. So, and that you choose to go to. So it's really important to get as much scholarship money as you can. All right, let's see. Why have the cost of higher education skyrocketed? There's a couple of reasons. Clemente has listed them out, and there's so many. there's so many reasons. Right now, college is getting more and more expensive because the more you, when you look at data, it shows that over the course of your life, if you have a college degree, you make on average about $1 million more in earnings from your career, from your job, working as a professional who has a college degree, compared to somebody who just graduated high school, but then they never got a college degree. On average, they make about $1 million less in the course of their life. So it's not guaranteed that going to college is going to allow you to make more money, but there is a direct correlation when you look at all of the research that getting a college degree is directly correlated with earning more over the course of your life. So maybe in your 20s, you're not making as much money, but as you progress through your career, you get a raise or you get promoted, having a degree really helps you qualify for those promotions and for those raises, whereas not having them could present some challenges. And of course, it depends on what career path you choose, what job you want to work at, all that kind of stuff. But there is that direct correlation. Yes, and everybody who's here today, we'll make sure to follow up and send you the presentation slides so you have the links and all these things to refer to after today. Let's see. Okay, I think I got all the questions in the chat, but if anything, definitely feel free to put them there. If you get accepted to private schools with a lot of scholarship funding, but you want to go to CUNY, that was a private question that I got. Is that a good choice? Honestly, the choice that's right for you is going to be the best choice. If it means that you're going to be able to save more money, that you're going to be able to, pursue the career goals that you have, I honestly, I think that there's so much pressure on students to make a certain college choice. But at the end of the day, college is not just about your degree. It's about your social life. It's about your experience. It's about, of course, how much money you have to pay for it. It's also about the network of professors and other students that you have access to. So when you think about a system like CUNY or SUNY, my niece just graduated from SUNY Cortland, so I always say SUNY too. But when you think about the network of professors, the network of opportunities through a system of schools like CUNY or SUNY, there's an amazing network of opportunities available for you. So I don't think that there's anything that's better than the other, but you have to think about what's best for you given your specific situation and really do the math to see what's going to cost the least for your family if the financial piece is weighing heavy for your family. All right, so let's take a look at what are the things that you need to do to get some financial aid. We talked about different ways to pay for college loans. In order to qualify for any of those loans, you do have to show the government that you can't pay for college with cash that you have sitting in the bank. If you are the type of person whose family has all the money that you need to pay for college in cash, maybe you do pay for college in cash and maybe you don't have to worry about scholarships or grants or student loans. But that's not the average American and that's not the average New Yorker. So we have to think about how do we get as much financial aid as we can. And the number one way to do that is to fill out your FAFSA. If you don't know what your FAFSA is, it is probably the most important thing for you to learn about in the next few weeks, months, year, because you're going to be applying to college pretty soon. And this is so, so, so important. The dates here are for the previous year, but when, let's say, for example, you're trying to go to college between, in this case, July 2021 and June 30th, 2022, then you need to have filled out the FAFSA that came out on October 1st, 2020, and it closes on June 30th of 2021. So you definitely want to make sure that you fill that out. If you are not going to attend college until July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023, then you have some more time because the FAFSA is going to open up on October 1st of 2021. So October 1st, every year, the FAFSA for the following year opens up and you're going to go ahead and log in and fill out all of your information. You want to give them your address and your parents' information, and you need to have all those documents in order. So when you fill out your parents' financial situation from your tax forms, then they're going to look at it and say, okay, based on what we see here from your family's earnings, you qualify for these things. Maybe you don't qualify for those things, or maybe you qualify for all the things. And this includes like Pell Grant, federal grants that you might get as well based on your family's income. So there's so much grant dollars that you can get just from filling out the FAFSA. And one of the things, yes, you need to reapply for the FAFSA every single year. So don't think you did it freshman year. Okay, you're good, you filled it out. No, every year on October 1st, you have to do it. The only year you don't have to do it is senior year if you're not coming back to college. Like if you're not gonna go to get a master's program or you're not going to continue to pursue college after your senior year in college, then you don't have to fill it out again until you're gonna apply to college again. But you have to fill it out every single year. You will fill out your FAFSA when you're applying to college. So that will be your junior year. And you would be using the information from 2 years prior. So it's really, really important to know, like, okay, when I fill out my FAFSA, I have to use the tax information that my parents got on their income tax 2 years prior. So not that year, not the year before. So if I'm applying right now for FAFSA and it's 2021, I'm going to use my 2019, my parents' 2019 tax returns, not 2020, not 2021, because you're using 2 years before that FAFSA filing year. So the sad thing that breaks my heart all the time, there's so many kids, they either don't know about FAFSA or they don't think it's important, they don't make the time. And if you don't fill out your FAFSA, there's so much money that you're literally just saying, no, no, thank you, I don't want that free money, which is which is crazy. Like everybody should fill it out, even if you're not sure. Like if your parents make a lot of income and you're like, I don't think my parents will qualify, still fill it out anyway, because it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't hurt you at all. It's only going to tell you that if you get financial aid money or if you don't. So it's free to fill it out. It's not going to hurt you in any way. So why would anybody choose not to fill it out, right? It doesn't make sense. But the amount of money that in free financial aid from the government that is lost to families every year who do not file the FAFSA is $2.6 billion. $2.6 billion that would have been given to American families for free for them to help them pay for college, but they don't get that money because they don't apply for the FAFSA. So you have to fill out your FAFSA. And if you need support, you're in the College Now program. Find out from your family, find out from the College Now support team if you can get support there. If not, there's somebody at your school, a teacher, really find out who can support you to fill out the FAFSA. And there's so many free videos on YouTube to help you fill it out as well. CUNY has great resources for this on the CUNY website. You can just search FAFSA. And then there's also really great ones on the actual FAFSA. The federal government actually puts out videos for FAFSA as well to help you understand how to do it. All right, if I'm not living with my parents, and let's say I'm living in a dorm, do I still use my parents? Yes, absolutely, Kelly, because even if you're living in a dorm, you're still dependent on your parents' income each year, because let's say Christmas break comes, you're not going to stay in that dorm, right? You're going to go home to stay with your parents over break. And when school ends, you're going to go back to being with your family. So you definitely do have to use your parents' income tax until you are earning on your own, or if you're independent from your parents. If you claimed independence and you're not being marked dependent under your parents' income tax, then you might use your own information. But generally speaking, most students are going to use their family's income tax. All right, what if my own tax return, if I was 18, do I still have to fill out the FAFSA? Even if you have your own tax return, if your parents still mark you as dependent, even if you earn money over like summer, working at a summer camp or doing a virtual internship, you still want to put your parents' income tax information. Do you have to pay financial aid back when you finish college? Only if it had loans next to it. If it was a scholarship, a grant, like Pell Grants, you do not have to pay back. A Pell Grant is awarded to you based on your demonstrated financial need. If you qualify for the Pell Grant and you get it, it's a grant. Again, remember, grants and scholarship means free money. But if you took a loan, either a federal loan or a loan from your college, you do have to pay that back. And you'll know because you have to sign paperwork to borrow that money. Versus grants and scholarships, that money is going to be awarded to you and you won't have any interest, charges, or fees associated with that money. It sounds like CUNY and SUNY are very much either helping or hindered by political winds on the city and state levels. That really does depend on what's going on, especially with like the funding. Right now, there is a really great program that you can actually go to school in New York City if you're a New York City student at a high school in New York for absolutely for free. So I would definitely recommend looking at that. It does sway, you're right. But as much as you can be aware and informed about what are the opportunities available each year, if when you apply, like take full advantage, because the reality is there's so many people that just don't take advantage. They don't look and find out what's available for them. Is there a Spanish version of FAFSA? Yes, absolutely. FAFSA is also available in Spanish. If I'm going into college, August 2022, when do I fill out the FAFSA? You would need to fill it out in this October of 2021 coming up. So you definitely want to make sure you fill that out before June of 2022. Yeah, so all of this information will be available. Again, a lot of people have been slacking me, like messaging me privately, like, are we going to get the slides? Yes, you'll get the slides, absolutely. And a lot of this information is going to be linked here. There are a couple of deadlines associated with FAFSA that you have to know about. So it's really important to pay attention to those deadlines. The major deadline at the national level is June 30th. And there's also state-specific deadlines. So your college might have its own deadline. It might be like, let's say it's May 1st. Then you want to make sure you fill out the FAFSA by May 1st. In New York, the New York state deadline is actually the same as the federal deadline of June 30th. So you're good by filling it out by June 30th. You're good for New York and for the national deadline. That being said, you are shown to get more money back available in financial aid, the earlier you fill out your FAFSA. So if it opens on October 1st, fill it out on October 1st if you can. Fill it out on October 2nd, right? Definitely fill that out as early as you can. And then one of the things that you want to pay attention to is what you're going to need to fill out your FAFSA. You're going to need a lot of information. You'll need social security number, tax records, any untaxed income, bank account information. The schools that you're trying to apply to, they each have a school ID. You'll want to know those school ID. You can always look it up online as you're applying, but it's easier to gather all those papers and then start filling out the FAFSA rather than filling out the FAFSA and then you got to keep pausing every 5 minutes to go find another paper that you need. It's much easier to just gather all the documents and then start filling it out. And it takes about 30 minutes to fill it out once you do gather all the paperwork. So it makes it a lot faster if you have all your papers together. All right, so what happens if your financial situation changes? This is one of the last points that I want to make. Some people fill out the FAFSA and then they get their financial aid package, but then their parents maybe lose their source of employment. COVID was like a huge reason why so many people's financial situation changed. So you still have to use the tax information from 2 years prior when you're filling out the FAFSA. That's still a requirement. But as soon as you fill out the FAFSA and submit it, you want to immediately contact the college financial aid office that you're interested in, the college that you're attending, and let them know that your situation has changed, because there's a process called professional judgment that you can begin, which involves submitting new information. So if your parents were laid off, you can get paperwork to prove that. If there's unemployment coming in, you can show that, you can prove it. That way the financial office has a better picture of what your actual demonstrated need is, and they're not looking at like tax information from before your parents lost their job or something like that, which makes it look like your situation is better than it is. So don't be afraid to reach out to the college financial aid office and let them know if your situation changed, because they can always respond to that and help you deal with that. All right, so after you fill out your FAFSA, you'll get something that is called the SAR, Student Aid Report. And your student aid report pretty much tells you everything that you need to know about what you have been awarded. It will tell you scholarships and grants that you qualified for, any loans that you are being offered to take, student work study, etc. And you will also see a number that's called your EFC for short, which means expected family contribution. If your family is low income, a lot of times that expected family contribution ends up being zero, which means that your family doesn't have to contribute anything because the grant funding that you qualified for will actually pay for college. Some families usually have something there. And so that amount is usually where you have to actually sit down and say, okay, that's the amount of money that I need to come up with that my family has to contribute for me to pay for college. So really want to pay close attention to that student aid report and look at the details on there and make sure that you understand it. And if you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to people at College Now. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll share my contact information, or to anybody at your school to be able to get help understanding the details on that student aid report. But usually that's where you'll know, okay, this is how much I'm probably going to end up having to pay for out of pocket. If it's $1,000, if it's $5,000, if it's $10,000, you'll know very clearly before you even get to college, so you can make good decisions about that. All right, everybody, we're pretty much wrapping up. I just want to make one last point, which is that when you get your financial aid office, they can be a little confusing because there's no standard format, which is so frustrating. It's so frustrating that they all look different. They're the same form, it's a financial aid award, but sometimes they include a lot of different things. Some will have loans, some will have grants, some will have awards. And so it's really important for you to look at them and compare them to really do the math to see which one is giving you the best deal. Because even though one school might give you more financial aid than the other school, you still might end up paying more as a net price, even though they give you more financial aid, because at the end of the day, you have to pay attention to the cost of attendance minus your aid, and that's where you get your net price. So it's really important to compare all of those reports next to each other, the financial aid award letters, before making, your official decision. So that's all I have. There are some resources listed on the slide here. When you look at the slides later in your email, these resources are great. Understanding the types of student loans that exist is one resource right there. You can just click on it and it will open up the activity that will help you. You can take you 15 minutes to complete this, and it will help you understand all the different types of loans. There's also one that allows you to compare financial aid packages. This one is my favorite. You guys, this one is so great because it gives you real examples of financial aid packages. So if you scroll down to page 2, you'll see an example from Villanova University. So say you got accepted to that. This is your financial aid package. Here's your award letter, and it tells you how much you got. Everyone that says loan, that's money that they're telling you that you need to borrow. If it says work study, that that's money you have to work for. If it says grant, hey, free, ding, 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 grant means free money. And then finally, financing option. Financing means that you're borrowing the money again. So in that case, you only know, just based on this, the only two lines that are actually free money is the federal work study and the Villanova grant. All the other ones, you're borrowing money, but they put them all on the same list. So it makes it seem like it's all free money, but you got to look for those words: loan, subsidized loan, unsubsidized loans. You want to really pay attention to those words that we talked about today to look and understand where is the amount of money I'm getting free and where's the amount of money that I'm borrowing. All right, so all of these resources are linked in the slides, and there's another example from a different university. So you can see lots of different examples of what the documents look like, and then there's questions to help you understand it a little bit better. It's like some multiple choice questions to give you a quiz and see if you really understand what you've gotten. All right, so that is pretty much all the resources that we have. They're all free. Everything is linked in the presentation deck. So I will make sure that Clemente has it, that we can send it to everybody who registered to attend today, so that you have all that information. And if you need anything from us, feel free to reach out via email. Just let us know that you have questions or that you want more clarification. And we're happy to, continue to be a resource. This is the first of a few different events, so feel free to come back to the other few events. We're covering a lot of different topics for Financial Literacy Awareness Month this week. So hopefully this was helpful, and just look out in your email for the slides that are going to be attached so you can refer back to this information later on. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Bye.
Bye.